So we know how the zodiac relates to uh, environments. Rashis, they're said to be the unconscious limbs of Vishnu, and so they deal with the more unconscious factors of life, the places, the colors, the environments of things. Um, the planets represent more of the people, like I have said before. And so when it comes to that, there are different cities that you can look at, and after studying and examining and spending some time in, you can see that there might be a sign, a certain rashi that tends to color that whole environment. Within that environment, there will still be other divisions and other cities and other things. So say a city is, say like someone was speculating that Orlando might be ruled by Libra because it's a very flat area that has expanded due to trade and market and has a lot of convention centers and bazaars and marketplaces and trade show spaces like that. And it's also a big place of tourism. You know what I mean? And Libra has to do with buying and selling and enjoying life and vacation. And Venus, uh, enjoying life. Luxury. Um, so within that context of Orlando being related to Libra, well, the skyscrapers downtown in Orlando might be related to Aries within that context because Aries rules mountains. And so a skyscraper is like an urban or a city version of a mountain. So within the context of that city, which is ruled by Libra, that skyscraper your boss is in might be ruled by Aries or something. Does this make sense? It's okay if not. This is anyways, just something that I wanted to talk about, and I think that this is going to not be very easy to like nail down every place, but certain places just have an archetypal quality or feeling to them, and that's we're going to see it. We're going to notice that if we know our planets and signs well enough. So I can definitely speak to my own hometown city where I've grown up because it has a certain quality that just predominates. Charleston is where I've grown up. Charleston, South Carolina. You can look that up on the internet if you want. Um, Charleston is related to Cancer. They're Cancer Rashi and the moon. The moon just because it's the lord of Cancer. So to begin with, I will make the case with that by just saying that, Cancer should obviously rule areas where crabs dwell. And there are crabs all over here. We live in the marsh. Charleston is a port city, and it's right in the marsh, and it floods, and it actually had to be filled in slowly, kind of like the Boston Harbor and like the Vatican. Um, so there are crabs everywhere. We have a lot of crab shirts. We have restaurants where you eat crabs. We have crab logos on everything. Crabs are marketed a lot. Going crabbing is a big deal. It's just an easy way to eat. Like when I had people fixing my house and stuff, like normal carpenters and stuff, they like left. I live by a lake and I don't eat meat, so I don't eat crabs. But they just threw a little crab trap out there in the lake while they were working and caught like a few crabs right there. It's just something that you do if you live here and you eat meat. Um, So there's a lot of crab activity, but mainly the city floods. The city actually itself floods regularly. And the market, the Vaishya area, the main Vaishya area, Cancer is a Vaishya, it's a Brahmin sign, but it's ruled by a Vaishya planet, so there's both of those qualities. So if you go to the Charleston market in the Vaishya environment on a new moon or a full moon, and it rains, then it would flood. It was only up until 2013 that they finally fixed the flooding in the market, but it still floods all over. Just they fixed the crosstown and the market area that floods because those were really affecting everyone. But it still floods pretty regularly, which is a very Cancerian thing. And you know how Cancer, the moon rules rice. The grain of the moon is rice, and rice can only grow by flooding, by tidal areas. Now, that's the Vaishya thing, but Cancer is also a Brahmin city, a Brahmin sign, and Charleston is called the Holy City because it has more church steeples that dot the skyline than any other city in America. And there is a Sattvic quality to Charleston. Um, but yeah, Charleston is actually called the Holy City, and there's actually a rule that no building can be higher than the highest church steeple, and so that's why there are no skyscrapers in Charleston, and why church steeples dot the skyline. The moon is actually on our state flag. If you want to Google the South Carolina state flag, you'll see an indigo colored flag with a palmetto tree and a moon, a waxing or waning moon in the image. So that's kind of interesting. That's like, wow. The moon is literally the symbol we use to represent our region. Couldn't be more obvious there. It's a port city, and it's one of the 13 original colonies, so it's very old. And the moon does have to do with the past. The moon has been said to be a storehouse of our karma. And port city, though, is the main thing. Ports are ruled by Cancer, because Cancer has to do with coming and going, waxing and waning, high tide and low tide. So things coming and going with the tides. So people that live by the water, that work on boats, live by ports, work with ports, etc., oftentimes have Cancer or the moon very influential in their chart. So it makes sense that this environment that is so Cancerian would also have a very successful port and be known as a port city. And again, moon is a Vaishya planet. It's really big for commerce. And then now let's consider the tourism. Charleston is one of the #1 tourist destinations in the world, and in Condé Nast Travel magazine, they ranked it the #1 tourist destination in the nation and in the world for a number of years and on different occasions. I know it won both of those for 2012. I kind of stopped paying attention because it won so many of these awards. A lot of us locals are like, stop giving us awards. There are 50 people a day moving here. We can't handle this growth. Cancer is also a sign of growth and the moon. And it doesn't always, growth can be out of control sometimes. And the moon is only gentle half the time. The other half the time it's cruel and it's waning. So it might be time for Charleston to wane in terms of growth. The other very cool thing about Charleston and tourism is that Jaimini says of Cancer, he says, at a distant place. Cancer is the main sign of foreign lands and living abroad and living in a foreign land and dwelling at a distant place. So Charleston, if it's the #1 tourist destination on the planet, it's the #1 distant place for Earthlings to go to on planet Earth at this time. So that's again making it a Charleston environment. Another clue. Cancer is a sign of the queen, the moon is the queen, and the queen is the most desired, and the queen gets to have what she wants, and this city is a very desirable city, or 50 people a day wouldn't be moving here. You see what I'm saying? And it's also kind of neat how the moon even stains old buildings with the salt water and the tide. So the older buildings can show a stain and a watermark of where they would regularly flood to. And I just think that's really neat. It's not, it's just kind of adding to that. But yeah, I mean, it can flood so bad that it can total your car. Like a lot of people during the last Hurricane Irma had their cars totaled even though they thought they were parked on high enough ground, but it still flooded over there and ruined and got salt water all in their engines and everything and ruined it. So, definitely a very lunar, flooding, rhythmic kind of quality to Charleston. It's a big drinking city, unfortunately. It's a college town, so there's a lot of drinking in bars and just enjoying life and going with your feelings. And, the moon and Cancer is very much just about enjoying life and going by the minute and the moment, and that doesn't always lead us to good places. It just depends on your moon and your chart and things. So, like I was saying, how rice is a grain that's ruled by the moon. Well, I mean, that's not going to fit in because there's no way Americans would grow rice. Nowhere an American can grow rice. Charleston. Charleston has actually grown rice and still does grow rice to this day. Charleston grows a special grain called Carolina Gold rice. That's how cool it is, and how much we're known for rice. We have our own type of rice that we grow, and it's more expensive because only like rich people buy it and eat it just as a novelty and as for fun, because it's not really grown much these days because rice is very hard. But back in the old days, when there were servants and slaves and all that, we grew a ton of rice. But rice is very labor intensive, so it's not as much of it grown now, but there is still a lot being grown. And it sells and you can buy it. It's like $6.99 for a little bag of rice that would normally cost maybe $2 or $2.50. So it's more expensive. But yeah, Charleston actually grows its own rice, and it could only do that because of the strong lunar influence and the flooding and the tides, Charlestonians actually ate more rice per capita than any other city in the nation for a long time. I've not seen that be proven wrong, but I would just assume that that's no longer true, because I would assume like a city with a big Chinatown or like a large Asian population would eat more rice nowadays. But it was a known fact for some time. I grew up knowing this fact. My father told me everyone knew it, that Charlestonians ate more rice per capita than anywhere else in the nation. So that's really just amazing, because Americans don't eat rice. Most Americans don't know how to cook rice, even though it's the simplest thing. People buy rice cookers because they don't know 2 parts water to 1 part rice. That's it. That's all you need to make rice. It's the simplest thing, but they don't, even know that, most Americans. Yet Charleston was over here growing rice, and still is. So we literally have more moon in our bellies growing up, and in our families and everything. We're feeding each other. We were all having more moon in our bellies here in Charleston. Isn't that interesting? And then to really end it, Cancer rules the beach and places of goddesses. And so if you go to the beach in summertime, it's for both men and women, it's a very beautiful place to be, because if you're a woman, you get to look at all these beautiful surfer guys who are super ripped and look really good, playing around with their arms and surfing in the ocean. You get to enjoy that eye candy. And then if you're a guy, you get to see beautiful women just laying out and getting better tans. And even though they probably already looked good. So that's definitely relatable there. And as I was saying that, I just went, oh wow, the reason I'm mixing up these Charleston and Cancer so much is the ch sound, Charleston, is even, a very lunar and relatable sound, because Chandra is, the name of the moon. So even those syllables are similar, and the first syllable you take is important for a name for how something is. So yeah, I think the ch sound is actually related to Venus, which is again the water element, but Chandra is the name of the moon, and it sounds just like Charleston. So that's kind of something I'm just thinking of now as I'm talking about it. But anyways, I hope this gives you guys a good example and something fun to ponder and think about when it comes to environments and the rashis. If you have environments or places you want to make a case for, do so. But also, I will say that I don't follow the method of, for years and years, I've read this on forums and groups, and everyone has always been predicting for regions. It's very common to use like the signing date of them incorporating, like Charleston becoming a city. You know what I mean? Or for the USA, we like to do, the day we sign the Constitution, and that's the birth chart of the U.S. And then everybody debates, well, no, but it was at noon, or it was this or that, because it's not. It's because it doesn't work, and so they don't. Most people don't think it doesn't work. They just think the time is off or this or that. But that just doesn't work, because that's dealing with incorporations and government things. But if you want to read the chart of the nation, you have to do it like the ancient Hindus did, which they never did that. They took the moment of the Aries ingress for the capital. That's it. That's what you read the chart from, and there's a whole school of astrology based on that called Varshafala. And yeah, that's a whole thing. So you would want to, if you wanted to read the fate of the U.S., don't read the U.S. Constitution chart. Read the chart of the moment Aries began, what was rising in Washington, D.C., in the capital at that time. So, because I just want to say that because there are books out and there are a lot of things out that talk about that, and I think they put, Charleston was incorporated during the time of like when the sun was in Leo or something, but I just don't relate to, I don't see that working, and I consistently have never seen that working on forums or anything for years. I would think at least once that would work, if that was really the case. So use those Aries ingress Varshafal techniques if you want to predict mundane stuff and for nations. That's my own opinion. Okay, thanks you guys.